With that, ladies and gentlemen, our opening speaker is Heidi. She's lovely, engaging and tidy. She's here to present at this cool FOL event, which is held today. It's Friday. It's the best that I could do, not as good as what she can do. Her middle name is Courage. It's actually Jane, but it's Courage for the sake of this session. The first cut is the deepest cut. She is the saint of self-leadership. Please say hi there to Heidi Denning.
Thank you, Andrew. I think. Hand up if you have had a few of life's curveballs tossed at you over the years. Yeah. Oh. And tell me, have any of those curveballs felt like they've been made out of steel, shot out of a cannon at 100 kilometres an hour, and when they've hit you, they've absolutely floored you? I don't know if you've heard of this guy, Frank Cannonball Richards, but he proclaimed to be able to take more punishment than anyone else in the world. And to prove that, he had cannonballs shot at him twice a day. Bit of a weirdo. Now, just like you, I've had some of life's normal kind of curveballs. And I've also had some big cannonballs. When I was 11, I woke one morning to find that I'd mysteriously lost all use of my legs and couldn't walk for the next 8 months. Once in South Africa, I was forced into a car with an AK-47 at my head. But today, I'm going to talk to you about a story on a cyclone, a tsunami, and when petrol bombs were thrown at my bedroom with the intention to burn me alive. You see, we cannot control the curveballs or the cannonballs that come into our world. All we can do is find the courage to do what it takes to rise above those adversities. As leaders, you know the path ahead is not always going to be easy. People will be unpredictable, projects will be never-ending, deadlines will be unrelentless. And life will continue to chip, chip, chip away at your resilience. But to be a talented leader, you know you first need to be a talented self-leader. You have to successfully lead yourself through the tough times before you can expect anybody to walk with you. This morning, I'd like to share with you the lessons that I've learned about resilience and self-leadership, and how when you apply them, you can transform your workplaces and our world. Many years ago, I started a not-for-profit in Vanuatu. Its sole purpose was to create life-changing opportunities for the next generation through education. It was something I did in my spare time on top of the successful health and education company I had here in Sydney. Together with the community in our 13th year, we set out to build a small library on one of Vanuatu's outer islands called Tanna. Tanna was a place where the literacy levels were way below the country's average. Now, it took us 2.5 years to build that library because we wanted the entire community to play a part. We had one 70-year-old village elder. He made 3,000 of the bricks for the walls. We had the mamas shoveling coral down on the beach that made the concrete slab. Young men who were doing their carpentry license came and did the practical component on our build. And on one sweltering hot day, 50 giggling children stood in a row and passed a bucket of water from the one tap in the school, chain gang style, to where we needed it for the concrete mix. Now, as you can imagine, that was a full bucket down that end, and there was only a little splash left by the time we got here, because they giggled their way through it, and we had so much fun. It took the entire day. On the grand opening, there were feasts, there were dancing, there were speeches, and there are hundreds of children and adults who, for the very first time in their life, got to walk into a library and hold a brand new book. It was one of the proudest days of my life. Unfortunately, though, only 8 months after this beacon of education was opened, Mother Nature threw one of her worst curveballs, a cannonball really, in the form of Cyclone Pam. With her 280-kilometre winds, she crippled the country's infrastructure, left a third of the population without a home. It was the most catastrophic natural disaster that Vanuatu had ever experienced. And on Tanna, a place that had been my second home for over 10 years, 80% of the food supply was destroyed, as was our library, of course. Now, I was there about a week later, and one of the village chiefs was telling me that as that cyclone approached, they had nowhere to go. They knew they were in so much trouble. So what he did, he gathered everybody in the village. The children were curled up in a little ball. Mamas kneeled over the top of them, linking arms, pinning the children down. And all the men of the village starfished over everybody to protect everybody. They stayed there for 6 hours while that cyclone raged ferociously over the top of them. They were wet, they were cold, people were crying, the children were screaming in terror. And they had no idea how long it would last. Can you imagine having these kind of self-leaders in your organisations? They collaborated together with little or no resources, stuck through the toughest of times, so they would come out the other end together, in this case, alive. About 3 weeks after the cyclone, a telecommunications tent was finally set up, and we could email back to our stakeholders to let them know what was going on. Now, I was furiously typing, and I heard this man outside, and he was speaking from what sounded like a handheld megaphone. I speak a little bit of Islama, but I couldn't get the whole gist of it, so I just kept typing. A couple of minutes later, I heard him again, but this time there was panic in his tone. And I looked around the tent. There was no one there except for me and the local lady sitting in front of me. And I said to her, "Hey, what's going on? Where is everybody? What's this man saying?" She said in her very relaxed island tone, "Oh, there's a tsunami coming." "A tsunami," I said. "Where to?" She said, "Here, to Tanna." I'm like, "Oh my God, when's the tsunami coming?" My voice went that high, by the way. She said, "Oh, today at 2:34. I look at my laptop, because that's pretty precise, and it's 2:21. So I pull all my belongings together and I race outside, and there is absolute mayhem going on. People are running everywhere. Mamas are carrying their crying babies. Papas are dragging their reluctant children, and everyone is pushing and shoving, trying to get into the few vehicles to get to high ground. Now, I have to tell you that I started to freak out, and my fight and flight response started to kick in. Now, we've all heard about this fight or flight response in times of danger. What's often not spoken about is the third component, which is called freeze. And as that tsunami approached, I froze. Now, at work, it is rare that our work stresses actually are life-threatening. But that does not mean that the freeze, fight, or flight response still does not go off. In fact, that annoying little email ping can cause a reaction. If you are in a stressful work situation and you go into freeze mode, that's when procrastination sets in. You get stuck, you can't move forward, and you don't finish what you start. If you get into fight mode during work stressful situations, you become stubborn and you hang on to ideas and projects for far too long. Creativity declines, as does your innovation. And if you take flight during stressful times, that's when you walk away far too early and don't bother completing what you've started. Has anyone felt any of those things at work? Procrastination's the big one, huh? Yeah. But as leaders, it's important for you to understand this reaction in yourself and in your team members. Now, back in Vanuatu, as I watched out to that vast Pacific in freeze mode, I knew that at any moment those tropical calm waters could turn into a monster, and there was no time for procrastination. I had to get the hell out of there. So just then, a UNICEF vehicle pulls up beside me and says, get in the back, get in the back. So I get in the back of this ute and we're going for high ground, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I could actually be about to die today. I don't know how big a tsunami wave is. I don't know if this hill is actually going to be big enough to keep me safe. I better call my husband and tell him that I love him. Ring, 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 ring. Now, in the 20 years that I have been married to my spunky leprechaun, I would have made at least 1,000 phone calls to him, and he has either picked up or I have been able to leave a detailed message. But today, the day I'm potentially going to die, this is what happens. The person you are trying to call is unavailable. Please leave your message and it will be converted to a text. Don't know why I did that accent, by the way. Voice to text on the day I'm going to die. I've got to tell him I love him. Telstra, I hate you. But I did my best to speak slowly, with children screaming and the ute suspension screeching. And I said, darling, there's a tsunami coming, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to speak to you again, but I want you to know that and before I could complete my sentence and say, love you, Telstra says back to me, thank you for this message, it'll be converted to a text. No. But here I stand before you, alive and well. The tsunami broke 100 meters offshore. Mother Nature decided that she was not going to reap more damage to this small island nation. Now, one of the most important lessons that I learnt from the cyclone adversity was what I now refer to as my resilience bucket theory. I'd like you to think of your resilience like a bucket, and all the water in that bucket represents your strengths and capabilities. Now, when times are good, your bucket is strong and sturdy, and you are on fire. But when times get wobbly, your bucket gets fragile, and little rusty holes start forming, and all your capabilities start leaking out. At work, you might feel a bit lethargic. You can't focus. You make poor decisions, silly mistakes. You get teary over nothing. You get cranky over nothing, and you lose your motivation. Leadership is hard when you are not physically and mentally at your best. But you see, resilience is not a finite resource. You have to work hard at keeping your bucket strong during the good times. So when those unexpected curveballs and cannonballs come your way, you have the strength and the ability to keep moving forward. I knew that I was about to step into one of the most important leadership projects of my life, to physically and emotionally rebuild this community. And it was up to me to be proactive, to keep my bucket strong. Because as we know, to be a talented leader, you first need to be a talented self-leader. You have to lead yourself successfully. And if I was going to be making decisions for this community, as well as trying to keep my business here in Sydney thriving still, then I needed to find the courage to do what it takes to be the leader everybody needed. Unfortunately, though, I learned this lesson a little too late. You see, I'd had a few tough years, like we all do, and my bucket was running on empty. My brain and body was sending me warning signs, but I was ignoring them. Because as a leader, I thought I needed to put everybody else first. That community in Vanuatu, the hundreds of volunteers we had supporting us, my staff in my Sydney business, my customers in my Sydney business, and of course my family and friends. Have you ever felt that way as leaders, that you need to put everybody else first? Yeah, it's easy to do. But it can have detrimental effects, which I was about to find out. 5 months after the cyclone, we took our first group back to Tanna. They were volunteers who were going to help us to rebuild that library. On the second night, after 2 long, hard days of work, I was woken to a very loud noise from a deep sleep. Petrol bombs had been thrown at my room. As I opened my eyes, I knew something was terribly wrong, and my body went into full alert because my whole room was filled with smoke. And as I jumped up, I could see the terrifying sight of ferocious flames just outside my window. As I looked through, I could see a group of men silently running away with sticks of fire. They were not drunk and yahooing, no. They were being as quiet as they could be, so they didn't alert us to the evil crime they just committed. I ran down the stairs and out of my building, and I couldn't believe what I saw. Everything was on fire. This beautiful little corner of the world that had been so important to me was under attack. You see, for the month prior to our arrival, there'd been some local cultural conflict that had nothing to do with us. But this group decided that if they targeted us, they would finally get their message heard. I started running around, bashing on all the volunteers' doors. Get up, get dressed, get down to the beach. People were running from the rooms, screaming in terror as they were dodging the balls of fire that were falling from the burning roofs. We trekked up the side of a hill where we found a place that we hoped would keep us safe. There was 23 women and 1 man. And we clung to each other for dear life throughout that night, in fear and confusion, waiting for the hope, waiting for the help that never came. You see, we're on an isolated corner of a remote island in the Pacific. You don't get to call 000. Our vehicles had been destroyed with petrol bombs. We were tending to all the injuries that had occurred. It was a long and terrifying night. I'll never forget about 4 a.m. as I was watching anxiously over everybody. I felt this deep sense of shame and guilt because these amazing humans had been harmed physically and psychologically on my watch. As their leader, it was my job to keep them safe. And although I could never have foreseen this cannonball coming, I still felt completely responsible. On arrival back to Australia, that's when my personal unravelling really began. I suffered terribly with post-traumatic stress disorder, crippling insomnia, physical pain from my injuries, and emotional pain from all the betrayals. Betrayal from the deputy at the school that I'd been supporting for over 10 years, who apparently knew these men were going to do what they did, but he decided not to warn us. Betrayal from the local police, who were supposed to protect us, but in fact had incited this behaviour. And betrayal from our own Australian embassy, who, despite being on the phone to me during the night and sending in 2 small planes the next day to evacuate us, told me they were not prepared to help us get justice because they were not prepared to jeopardise their relationship with the Vanuatu government. As I said, prior to this event, I had depleted my bucket of all its resources, so when this cannonball came at me, I had nothing left to fight with. And because of this, I had become this catastrophizing, scaredy cat, anxious version of me that I did not recognize nor like. But I knew if I wanted to get Heidi Denning back, I had to fight for her. I had to do the work because no one was going to do it for me. I had to start leading myself and strengthening that bucket of mine. Now that I've been able to extract the lessons from my own adversities, and I've studied the world's most well-known self-leaders, it's my privilege that I now help organisations to develop this crucial component within their leadership teams. And part of the methodology that I use is what I refer to as my strong bucket formula. It's been inspired by authors and self-leaders such as Dr. Adam Fraser, Arianna Huffington, and many more. And I'd now like to share with you this 4-part formula. Part 1, every day you need to find a way to be still, just for 10 minutes. Be still. Sit in silence. Listen to one of the gazillion meditation or mindfulness apps that you can download. Or just do some deep breathing. We've got the incredible Nam who's going to actually show you how to do that effectively later today. Now, I know some of you are saying right now in your head, Heidi, yeah, right. I do not have time to be still for 10 minutes a day. But I'm telling you, it's only 0.7% of your whole day. Of course you do. You can do it on the ferry into work, on the bus. You can do it during your lunchtime. And if worse comes to worse, just go and sit in the toilet. Part 2, for 1 hour every week, I need you to find joy. That's it, find joy. Find something that makes you happy, makes you giggle, laugh out loud, and fills you up. Now, this might be a hobby that you love. It might be a massage that you go to each week. It could be that you like to dance. When I was healing, I did samba lessons, and that made me feel good. But you might just want to crank up the music in your lounge room and get your groove on. I highly recommend doing that to Rod Stewart. Before I tell you part 3, can I have a show of hands? Who works hard in this room? You're not going to say it if you've got your manager next to you. Exactly, and that's why once a month you have to diarise a day so you can chill out. That's right, chill out, baby. I want you to sleep in, stay in your gym jams, sloth on the couch, immerse yourself in a good book, have a binge fest with Netflix. Put it in your diary. 1 day a month. What, 3.2% of your whole month? You can do that. And lastly, the last part of this formula is for 1 long weekend every quarter. Take a break. Go on a short getaway somewhere you've never been. Or have a staycation in this amazing city that we live in. Go to the galleries, see a show. Drink cocktails in a swanky wine bar. Go walking in nature. Just book it in. We get our public holidays anyway, but if you need to take an extra day, put in your leave form on Monday. I give you permission. You can do this. Because you see, self-leaders know what they need to do to keep their buckets strong. Before you leave today, I'd love you to find me and tell me what it is you're going to do to keep your bucket strong from now on. Because when you do that, not only can you bend rather than break during high-pressure times, but you become the incredible leaders you were destined to be. I'm now going to leave you with this favourite saying of mine. If it's going to be, it's up to me. Self-leadership is not something you can outsource. There is not a category on Airtasker or Upwork, nor can you delegate it to a staff member. Self-leadership is about sitting in the driver's seat of your life and having the courage to do what it takes when times are tough so you can keep moving forward. I know everyone here in this room has already had curveballs and cannonballs, and I hate to be the one to tell you, you're probably going to have more. In your professional life, there will be staff redundancies, budget cuts, cranky colleagues, annoying customers. In your personal life, there will be small children, aging parents, loss of loved ones. None of that you can control. All you can do is have the courage to keep your bucket strong during the good times. So when those unexpected cannonballs and curveballs get thrown your way, you have the strength and the ability to keep moving forward. It is the courageous, resilient, gutsy self-leaders who are transforming our workplaces. And if we can collectively live a life of self-leadership, we're going to make a positive difference across the globe. And that's because self-leadership is the future of leadership. Thank you very much.